The second time Ethan Cole proposed to Madison Blake, I applauded. That was how I knew I had really come back. Crystal glasses glowed beneath the chandeliers of the Boston Harbor Hotel ballroom. 400 guests sat around tables dressed in white linen while a 12-foot screen behind the stage displayed the silver and blue logo I had designed 6 years earlier, Everly, the luxury travel company Ethan and I had built from an apartment with bad heating and one folding desk. Ethan stood beneath that logo in a black tuxedo, one knee on the floor. Madison covered her mouth. Oh my God. People laughed softly. Then Ethan opened the velvet box. The diamond caught the light, exactly as it had 5 years ago. Exactly as it had in my first life. Madison Blake? Ethan said, his voice amplified through the ballroom. You were the first person who ever made me believe I could build something extraordinary. My fingers tightened once around my champagne flute. 5 years ago. Those words had broken me. I had been sitting at table 6 then too. I had been wearing the same dark green dress. My engagement ring had been on my left hand. And when Ethan knelt in front of another woman, I had stood so quickly that my chair crashed backward. I had walked onto the stage. I had demanded an explanation in front of investors, employees, reporters, hotel staff, and everyone who had ever watched me work beside him. Ethan had stared at me as though I were embarrassing him. Then he had said the sentence that ruined the next 6 years of my life. Evelyn, we talked about this, it's over. We had not, but people believed the man holding the microphone. Madison had cried. Ethan had looked exhausted. I had looked unstable. By midnight, video of my breakdown had reached half the Boston startup community. By Monday, my access to Everly's internal systems had been suspended pending review. By the end of the month, Ethan had convinced me to sign a settlement agreement while I was desperate, humiliated, and terrified of losing the company I had helped build. I lost it anyway. 5 years later, Everly was valued at more than $700 million. I had $40,000 from the settlement and a consulting business that never recovered from the reputation Ethan helped create. At 35, I died on a wet interstate after working 14 hours for a client who paid late. My last clear memory had been headlights sliding sideways across the rain. Then I woke up in my apartment, 29 years old. My phone alarm said October 18, the date of Ethan's proposal. For nearly an hour I had sat on the bedroom floor, touching my face, my hands, the old scar on my knee, reading messages that had been dead history to me for 6 years. At 7:42 that morning, one message had stopped my breathing. Julian Cross, dinner after the gala. I had stared at his name until the screen dimmed, because 3 nights before Ethan publicly proposed to Madison, Julian Cross had asked me to marry him. Not because we were strangers and not because I needed saving. Julian had been my boyfriend when I was 22. The first man I had loved before timing, distance, and pride turned us into two people who knew each other too well to become casual friends 3 days ago. In this life, though it felt like 6 years and 3 days ago to me, he had sat across from me in a quiet restaurant in Back Bay and said, I know you're engaged. I know the answer is no. But I spent 5 years pretending I stopped loving you, Evelyn, and I'm done lying about it. If your answer ever changes, I want to marry you. I had refused him politely, firmly. Then I had gone home to Ethan. In my first life, I had never told him about Julian's proposal. Tonight, Ethan still didn't know. On stage, Madison whispered, yes. Applause exploded through the ballroom, so I joined it slowly, calmly. 3 seats away, Ethan's CFO Martin Ellis turned toward me. His smile disappeared. Evelyn. I looked at him. What? He lowered his voice. Are you okay? For the first time in 6 years, the question almost made me laugh. I'm fine. You and Ethan apparently have different announcements tonight. Martin looked horrified. I took a sip of champagne on the stage. Ethan helped Madison to her feet. He kissed her. My table went completely silent. I put down my glass and opened my evening bag. My phone showed 9:18 p.m. I typed one sentence to Naomi-chan. Are you awake? She answered 20 seconds later. For you, unfortunately. I smiled. I need an IP lawyer tomorrow morning. The typing indicator appeared, then vanished, then came back. What did he do? I looked toward the stage. Ethan had one arm around Madison's waist while photographers crowded near them. Something predictable. Naomi called immediately. I declined the call. Can't talk. Gala 3 dots. Then do not sign anything. That was why Naomi had been my best friend since sophomore year. I wrote, I won't this time. I meant it, Evelyn. I knew Julian's voice before I turned. He stood behind my chair in a midnight blue suit, one hand resting loosely in his pocket. Julian Cross did not look dramatically different from the man I remembered at 39. A few fewer lines around his eyes, maybe no gray at his temples yet, but the stillness was the same. He had built Crosswell Group into a hospitality and travel technology empire by rarely moving before he knew exactly why he was moving tonight. His expression was not still, it was furious, not at me at the stage. You knew? He asked. No. His jaw tightened. I nodded toward the empty chair beside me. You can sit down, everyone else is pretending not to stare. Julian sat. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. On stage, Ethan was explaining that he and Madison had found their way back to each other after years apart. Someone near the front side. Julian looked at my left hand. My engagement ring was still there. Do you want to leave? In my first life, I had spent years remembering all the things people had decided for me that night. Ethan decided our relationship had ended, his board decided I was disruptive, the press decided I was jealous, friends decided I needed rest, lawyers decided what was fair. I looked at Julian. No. He waited. I want to see exactly what he says. Something in his face changed, not approval, recognition. All right. So we listened. Ethan thanked investors, employees, advisors, then Madison. He called her the person who understood the vision before anyone else did. That one was almost impressive. I had written the original 78-page Everly brand and operating concept before Ethan had a company name. Madison had been living in London at the time. When Ethan finally stepped off stage, he did not come directly to me, of course he didn't. He worked the room for 14 minutes first. He accepted congratulations, shook hands, introduced Madison as his fiancée. Only after two investors glanced repeatedly toward my table did he walk over. Madison stayed several feet behind him. Ev. I hated that nickname. I had forgotten how much. Ethan bent slightly. Can we talk? I looked up. Sure. His eyes flicked toward Julian. The smallest flash of annoyance appeared. Privately. Julian stood. I'll be at the bar. He walked away without asking me whether I needed him to stay. That mattered. Ethan took the empty chair. For 1 second he seemed confused by my expression. He had prepared for tears, accusations, maybe screaming. Calm had not been in his contingency plan. I was going to tell you. When? Tonight. You did. His eyebrows drew together. Evelyn. What? Don't do that. Do what? This cold thing. I almost admired him. He had proposed to another woman in front of 400 people while I still wore his ring, and somehow my tone had become the problem. You said we talked about this. His eyes shifted. We have talked about how things haven't been working. That isn't the same as ending an engagement. You knew Madison and I were reconnecting. I knew you hired her. He rubbed his forehead. I didn't want tonight to become ugly. It hasn't. That stopped him. He looked at me carefully. Are you saying you're okay with this? No. Then what are you saying? That I understand it. His shoulders loosened as though I had just given him permission. There it was, the Ethan I had failed to understand the first time. He didn't need forgiveness, he needed a narrative in which he was still reasonable. I care about you, he said. I always will, but Madison and I have history. So do we. I know. 6 years. I know. A mortgage. Application in progress, he winced. A wedding venue deposit. Ev. And my name on approximately half the work this company runs on. His expression changed very slightly. That was the first moment tonight when I saw fear. Not because I might leave him, because I had mentioned the company. I smiled. I'm tired, congratulations. I stood, he caught my wrist, not hard still. I looked at his hand until he released me. Let's talk tomorrow. We will. Promise me you won't do anything impulsive. I thought of Naomi's message, do not sign anything. I promise. That answer relaxed him. Poor Ethan. He thought impulsive meant screaming. In my first life, I learned too late that the most dangerous decisions I had ever made were the quiet ones I signed after someone convinced me to calm down. I walked toward the coat check. Julian was waiting near the ballroom doors. You stayed, I said. You said you wanted to see what he said. You didn't say you wanted to walk out alone afterward. Outside, October. Air rolled in from the harbor. For a minute I simply stood beneath the hotel awning. Cars moved along Atlantic Avenue. Someone laughed behind us. The world had continued. I had died. And the world had continued then too. Julian looked at me. Evelyn. I turned. He did not touch me. He did not say Ethan was an idiot. He did not tell me I deserved better. Instead he asked, do you remember what I asked you on Tuesday? My heartbeat slowed. Yes. I meant it. I know. I'm not asking you to answer tonight. I watched him. In fact, he continued, I'd prefer you didn't. That surprised a laugh out of me. Julian's mouth moved slightly. Good, you can still do that. Do what? Laugh when you're angry. I looked across the street at the harbor. In another life I ruined everything tonight. You didn't ruin anything. You don't know that. No. he said quietly, but I know you for 6 years. In another timeline, nobody had said those words to me. I swallowed. Then I removed Ethan's ring. It did not feel dramatic, it felt surprisingly light. I placed it in my evening bag. Julian watched, saying nothing. Your proposal, I said. His gaze met mine. Is it still open? Yes, I nodded. Then don't withdraw it. His breathing changed just once, but I heard it. I'm not accepting. I figured. I have things to clean up. I figured that too. And if I ever say yes, it will not be because Ethan chose someone else. Julian stepped closer, not enough to touch me, enough to make sure I heard him. My proposal is not an exit strategy, Evelyn. For the first time that night, something inside me finally cracked, not in pain, in relief. I looked back through the hotel windows. Ethan was visible near the stage, smiling beside Madison beneath a company logo that belonged, in more ways than he remembered, to me. In my first life, I had spent that night asking how he could do this to me. This time I asked a better question: what exactly still belonged to me? And by morning I intended to know. Naomi opened her apartment door at 7:03 the next morning, wearing gray sweatpants, a Harvard Law sweatshirt, and the expression of a woman prepared to commit violence through properly formatted legal correspondence. Coffee, she said. She handed me a mug, then she pointed toward her dining table. Evidence? I sat. Naomi had already placed 3 yellow legal pads beside her laptop. She believed laptops failed, cloud storage disappeared, people lied, and yellow paper survived all 4. Start from the beginning. Which beginning? The one where your fiancé proposed to another woman? Ex-fiancé. Her eyebrows rose. Good, continue. I told her everything that had happened at the gala, not the rebirth. There were limits to what even Naomi would accept before breakfast. Instead, I framed my strange certainty as preparation. I think Ethan is going to try to remove me from the company. Naomi stopped writing. Are you an employee? No, Heart Creative has the services agreement. Equity. 6% fully vested common, another 2% subject to a consulting milestone. Board seat. No. Officer. No. She leaned back. You built half the company without becoming an officer. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you were sleeping with the founder. I was engaged to him. That is worse. Thank you. I'm your lawyer this morning, not your friend. You haven't agreed to represent me. I decided when I saw the proposal video at 1:00 am. Of course there was already a video. I rubbed my forehead. Naomi tapped her pen against the pad. Let's separate heartbreak from rights. What does Heart Creative own? I opened my laptop. Unlike my first life, I had spent the hours after the gala downloading nothing from Everly's internal systems. That distinction mattered. Instead, I had gone through my personal business records, Heart Creative invoices, contracts, drafts stored in my company Dropbox, trademark correspondence sent to my email, original design files created before Everly existed, the master services and intellectual property license agreement. I slid a printed copy toward Naomi. She read silently for almost 4 minutes, then she looked up. Evelyn, what? Did Ethan read this before he proposed to his side chick? First love. I'm not billing by euphemism. Despite myself, I smiled. Naomi pointed to Section 8. This is not an assignment. I know. No, I mean this is very specifically not an assignment. Heart Creative had granted Everly an exclusive license to use certain brand assets, editorial systems, destination content, and the first 2 versions of the Compass Index. The license remained valid as long as Everly paid quarterly royalties and maintained my attribution on specified intellectual property records. At the time, the structure had been suggested by an accountant because Everly could not afford to buy my work outright. Later, when the company began raising serious money, Ethan repeatedly told me we would clean up the paperwork before Series A. We never had. In my first life. After the gala, his lawyers cleaned it up by paying me almost nothing to sign everything away. Naomi kept reading. Are royalty payments current? I stared at her. What? Quarterly license fee, Schedule C? I pulled up my business bank account. The last payment had arrived in April, nothing in July, nothing in October. My pulse changed. I thought finance switched it into my consulting retainer. Does the agreement say they can do that? No. Do you have an amendment? No. Email approving it. I don't remember. Search. I did. 10 minutes later, I found an email from Martin, Everly's CFO, sent 6 months earlier. Ethan asked us to simplify the Heart Creative payments and include licensing in the consulting retainer. Let me know if you have concerns. My reply: that works administratively as long as the licensing obligations remain separately accounted for under the existing agreement. Martin understood. We'll keep them separated on our books. Naomi read it twice. Well? What? Paper. Remembers what people deny. A chill moved through me. In my first life I had never checked. I had been too busy trying to save my relationship. How bad is this for them? That depends on whether they cure it, whether they are using anything outside the scope, whether the agreement was modified elsewhere, whether your materials qualify for the protections we think they do, whether they have defenses, whether you've accidentally waived something. So not an instant kill switch. Naomi stared at me. Please never say kill switch in front of a lawyer. Fine. This is a contract dispute, not a revenge button. I understand. Good, because if your goal is to destroy your ex's company, hire someone else. My answer came immediately. I want what's mine. Naomi studied me, then she nodded. That I can work with. My phone buzzed. Ethan, can we meet at the office at 10? I showed Naomi. Do I go? Yes. Alone? You can handle a conversation. I did a bad job last time. She frowned. Last time? At the gala? Apparently not. Right, wrong, life. I took another sip of coffee. What should I say? The truth, you're ending the engagement, you're reviewing your commercial relationship with Everly, you won't sign anything today. And if he fires me, you're not an employee, right? If he terminates the consulting agreement, send it to me. Another message arrived. Ethan, I really need you to be reasonable about this. Naomi leaned across the table. Do not reply to emotional bait. I wasn't going to. She looked genuinely impressed. Who are you? At 9:55. I walked into Everly's office in Seaport. The receptionist, Mia, looked up and immediately looked uncomfortable. News traveled quickly. Morning, Evelyn. Morning. Behind her, the company logo filled an entire white wall. I had sketched the first version on a paper napkin at a diner near Northeastern University. My first instinct was grief. My second was calculation. Original sketches, dated, personal. Possession, that was what had changed. I took the elevator to the 6th floor. Ethan waited inside the main conference room. Madison was with him. Of course she wore cream trousers and a black blouse, elegant enough for a board meeting and casual enough to imply she belonged there. On her left hand was my replacement. Evelyn, she said carefully. Madison. Ethan stood. Thanks for coming. I took a chair. He remained standing. Apparently he had planned the power dynamic. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. We need to get ahead of this, he said. Of what? The situation. You proposed to someone, she said. Yes. Madison shifted. Ethan exhaled. People know you and I were engaged. We were engaged. Right, which creates confusion. For whom? Investors, the team, press. I looked at him. You're concerned people may think you proposed to another woman before ending your engagement. His mouth tightened. This is why I wanted us to talk privately. Madison finally spoke. No one wanted to hurt you. I turned toward her. Then we've already established at least one operational failure. Her face hardened. Ethan put a hand on the table. Enough. I waited. He pulled a folder from beside his laptop. My body remembered that folder, not the exact papers. The feeling. In my first life, lawyers had placed something similar in front of me 3 days later. Mutual separation, confidentiality, non-disparagement, transfer, release. I had signed because Ethan told me the company would collapse if I didn't. He slid the folder over. This is just something legal drafted so there's clarity. I didn't touch it. What is it? A transition agreement. From what? Your consulting role? There it was. Madison watched me carefully. I opened the folder without moving it closer. The first page used friendly language, transition, continuity, mutual respect. The second page was less friendly. Heart Creative would assign all intellectual property, used or contemplated for use by Everly, all of it in exchange for $85,000, an acceleration of half my remaining equity milestone in my first life. The final number had become $40,000. Apparently I had negotiated against myself while grieving. I closed the folder. No. Ethan blinked. You haven't read it. I read enough. Take it home. My lawyer will review it. Silence. Madison's expression changed first. Your lawyer? Yes. Ethan sat down. When did you hire a lawyer? This morning. Evelyn? Yes. Why are you turning this into a legal fight? I genuinely didn't understand the question. You handed me a legal agreement. That's standard. So is having counsel review it. He looked at me for several seconds. In my first life, I had mistaken control for confidence. Now I could see the moment confidence left him. Who is your lawyer? You don't need that yet. Is it Naomi? I smiled. That answered him. He swore under his breath. Madison looked between us. What exactly does Heart Creative own? Interesting. Ethan didn't answer her. I noticed. So did she, I stood. I'll have counsel respond. You're leaving. You terminated my consulting role, I said. Transition. You gave me a paper assigning away my company's assets. Jesus, Evelyn, we built Everly together. Yes. Then stop acting like we're strangers. I looked at Madison's ring, then back at him. You made us strangers in front of 400 people, for once. He had nothing to say. I walked to the door. Evelyn. I stopped, his voice softened. You don't want to burn 6 years of work because you're hurt. That sentence followed me into the hallway. In another life it had worked. This time I turned. I don't plan to burn anything. I looked at the Everly logo behind him. I'm just checking who owns the matches. At 11:46 Naomi emailed Everly's counsel a preservation notice. At 2:15, she began a formal review of the Heart Creative agreements. At 4:03, I removed Ethan as an authorized user from the personal credit card I had given him 3 years earlier. At 4:17, I canceled the appointment for our joint mortgage pre-approval. At 5:10 I called the wedding venue and asked what portion of the deposit had been paid from my account. At 6:32 Julian texted, "Have you eaten?" I stared at the message, then typed, "That depends. Does coffee count?" No, I smiled. 10 minutes later, dinner. No marriage proposals, I promise. For the first time all day I hesitated, not because I wanted Ethan back, because I remembered another version of myself who had spent 6 years believing accepting help meant weakness. I wrote, "Dinner is okay." Julian replied, 7. I looked around my apartment. Ethan's shoes were near the door, his books were on my shelves, half my closet belonged to him. This relationship was still physically everywhere. But for the first time it no longer felt permanent. 7 works. I set my phone down, then I opened a fresh document. At the top I typed property/account/contract/personal items, one line at a time. I began separating my life from Ethan Cole. Heartbreak, I had learned once already, was emotional. Leaving was administrative this time. I intended to finish the paperwork. Julian chose a neighborhood Italian restaurant with 12 tables and no photographer waiting outside. That alone told me he understood the assignment. When I arrived, he was already seated in the back. No private dining room, no security hovering visibly, no bottle of wine worth more than my first car. Just Julian in a charcoal sweater with his suit jacket folded over the chair beside him. "You own hotels?" I said as I sat down. "A few. Restaurants. Some. And you chose this place. They make good pasta." It was so Julian that I nearly laughed. A server brought water. For several minutes we talked about nothing important: food, traffic, a renovation Crosswell was doing in Portland, the absurdity of hotel pillows. It was the first hour since I woke in my second life that no one demanded a decision from me. Eventually Julian set down his fork. "How bad?" I knew what he meant. Manageable. Personally or legally? Personally, weirdly manageable. Legally, Naomi is still reviewing. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I don't know." "That's allowed?" I looked at him. 6 years had passed for me, 3 days had passed for him since he proposed marriage to a woman engaged to someone else. It created a strange imbalance. I remembered things Julian had not done yet: interviews, acquisitions, a newspaper photograph of him standing beside his mother at a hospital fundraiser, an article announcing Crosswell's expansion into Europe, and one terrible piece I had read. In my first life, when his mother died, I had almost called him. Instead, I had stared at his number for an hour and told myself I no longer had the right. "Why did you ask me?" I said. He understood immediately. "To marry me?" "Yes." Terrible first date conversation. "This isn't a first date." "No." His expression softened. "Maybe that's part of the problem." I waited. Julian looked down briefly. "I saw you again 18 months ago at the tourism summit in New York. You were on a panel. I remember. You argued with a venture partner for 20 minutes. He said customer loyalty was just a discount problem. He deserved it. I smiled. Julian continued. "I realized I was still measuring every room by whether you were in it." My chest tightened. "That sounds rehearsed." "It's been 5 years. I had time." "Julian, I'm not asking again tonight." "Good. I just don't want you thinking I saw problems with Ethan and decided to exploit them." I looked at him carefully. "You knew there were problems. You looked tired every time I saw you." "That isn't the same thing." "No. You met Ethan twice. 3 times. Did you dislike him?" "Yes." I blinked. Julian took a drink of water. "You wanted honesty. I expected diplomacy. I saved that for shareholders." That laugh came more easily. Then I noticed what he had not said. He hadn't called Ethan stupid, hadn't told me he had predicted this, hadn't used betrayal to make himself look better. "Were you hoping I'd leave him?" "Yes." The directness hurt less than it should have. "Did you ever interfere?" "No. Even when you proposed. That was interference. Fair?" I regretted the timing the minute I said it. Not the proposal. No. I looked away. Outside the window a couple walked past holding hands. Julian spoke more quietly. You don't owe me an answer because he hurt you. I know. And you don't owe me a second chance because we had a first one. I know. You keep saying that. Because I spent a long time knowing things and behaving like I didn't. He studied me. For one dangerous second I wondered if he could somehow see the truth, 35-year-old me sitting inside 29-year-old skin. Then he said, that sounds exhausting. It was. After dinner Julian walked me home. Ethan's car was parked across the street. I stopped. Julian noticed immediately. Do you want me to stay? I almost said yes. Then I thought of Naomi, separate rights from emotions. No. Julian nodded. No wounded ego, no insistence. I'm 5 minutes away if that changes. You live 20 minutes away. I'll drive creatively. Please don't. He smiled. I crossed the street alone. Ethan was sitting on the front steps. He stood when he saw me. Then he noticed Julian across the road. His face changed. You went out with him. I unlocked the building door. Yes. Seriously. I turned. You proposed to Madison yesterday. That doesn't mean you start dating someone the next night. I stared at him for a moment. Even the reborn version of me had no response. Finally I said, I'm going upstairs. He followed. Inside the apartment I found 2 suitcases near the couch. I had packed them that afternoon. Ethan stopped. You packed my stuff? Most of it. There are some files in the office I didn't touch. This is my home too. The apartment lease was in my name. He had moved in 2 years earlier. You can stay tonight if you need time to arrange somewhere else, I said. But I need a move-out date in writing. He laughed once, not because anything was funny. You really did lawyer up. This isn't legal advice, it's a boundary. You don't talk like this. Maybe you never gave me a reason to. I gave you 6 years. I looked at him. There was the trap. Time is debt, history is obligation. I gave you 6 too. He took off his coat. I know you're angry. I'm not actually that angry. That's worse. For you. For us. There is no us. He stared at me. You don't mean that. In what possible way could I mean anything else? His confidence returned slightly. Because this was familiar territory. Emotional Evelyn, the woman he knew how to negotiate with. You and I have been more than romantic for years, he said. Everly, the house plans, our friends, everything. Madison and I are engaged. He stopped. Yes. So what exactly are you asking me to preserve? He opened his mouth, closed it. That was when I understood something that had taken my first life years to see. Ethan had not expected to choose. He expected to change categories. Madison would become the exciting partner standing beside him. I would remain the dependable person who knew his passwords, preferred vendors, childhood stories, investor personalities, allergies, and every weak point in Everly's business. He thought romantic betrayal canceled intimacy while keeping utility. I still need you at Everly, he said. There it was. I almost thanked him for making it simple. Your lawyers terminated my consulting relationship this morning. It was a proposal. A transition agreement. We can modify it? No. Then what do you want? I'm figuring that out. He paced toward the windows. You realize a dispute hurts your equity too? Yes. Investors hate uncertainty. Yes. You really want this hanging over a financing round? I folded my arms. Are you asking me to ignore my rights because protecting them could make your investors uncomfortable? Our investors. The phrase landed strangely. In my first life, he had used the same inclusive language whenever he needed something. For me, our company, our future, our sacrifice. Then when ownership mattered, everything became his. I have 6%, I said. You know what I mean? I finally do. His phone rang. Madison. I saw the name. So did he. He declined the call. Some old reflex inside me noticed. Another part of me no longer cared. Take it, I said. We're talking. You're engaged to her. Stop saying it like that. Like what? Like you're trying to punish me. I walked toward the hallway. I'm going to sleep. What? About my stuff. Pick a date. He stared at the suitcases, then back at me. Cross is behind this. I stopped. No. He's been waiting. Probably. And you don't think that's manipulative? No more than asking another woman to marry you while I was still wearing your ring. He flinched. Good. Not because I enjoyed it, because for once the sentence reached him. The next morning, Ethan emailed that he would remove the remainder of his belongings by Sunday. Naomi sent Everly a formal notice regarding unpaid licensing fees and requested accounting records necessary under the Hart Creative Agreement. The agreement required 30 days to cure certain payment breaches. No dramatic shutdown, No overnight injunction, just a clock, 30 days at noon. Theo Grant messaged me from his personal number. Theo had been Everly's third data hire. He was young, painfully honest, and had once told Ethan during an all-hands meeting that optimism is not a metric. "Are you okay?" I wrote. "I will be," he replied. I heard. "Legal stuff is happening." I stared at the screen, then typed carefully, "Don't send me company documents, don't access anything for me, seriously." His response came instantly, "Wasn't going to." Then another, "But check your own old version files." My pulse shifted. What old version files? 3 dots. The Compass Dex version 3 wasn't in the original license schedule, right? I sat straighter. Version 3. The third generation of the Compass Index had been developed through Heart Creative during a consulting project the previous year. I had assumed legal added it to the license schedule. I searched my files. Schedule it listed versions 1 and 2. The amendment added destination editorial libraries. No Compass 3. I searched email. There had been discussions, drafts, red lines, no executed amendment. My hands went cold. Everly's current investor materials advertised Compass 3 as one of its core proprietary assets. I called Naomi. She answered with, "Tell me you didn't download confidential data." "I didn't." "Good. What happened?" "I think Everly is using an unlicensed version of Compass." Silence, then keyboard sounds. "Send me only documents already in your lawful possession." "I will." "And don't contact Theo about this again." "I won't." "Evelyn?" "Yes." "Did Ethan know version 3 wasn't signed?" I remembered an email, an argument. Ethan telling me legal housekeeping could wait until after the next raise. "I think so." Naomi exhaled. Then our conversation just changed. That afternoon Julian arrived. Outside my apartment carrying a cardboard box. "What's that?" "You said Ethan moved out." "So? You left a record player at my place 7 years ago." I stared at him. "You still have it. You said you'd come back for it." "I forgot." "I didn't." He handed me the box. Inside was the cheap turntable I bought when I was 23. Under it were 4 records. The corners were worn. My throat tightened. "You kept these?" "They were yours." Julian said it as though that explained everything. Maybe it did. I looked down at the scratched black plastic lid. A piece of a life I thought had disappeared. He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. "I can go." "No." The word came out too quickly. He waited. I moved aside. "Come in." Julian stepped into the apartment. Ethan had just left. Not as a replacement, not as a winner. He carried one old record player to the shelf by the window and plugged it in. That evening we listened to an album we had loved at 23. Neither of us talked about marriage for the first time. That made the possibility feel real. 30-day cure periods are not cinematic. No one bursts into a boardroom, no servers shut down, no executive gets dragged away. Mostly people send emails. That was how I learned revenge in real life was less satisfying by the hour and more satisfying by the month. Everly's counsel responded to Naomi 6 days after our notice. They disputed the royalty calculation. They argued the consulting retainer had effectively absorbed the license payments. They denied any intentional breach, and on Compass version 3 they claimed Everly possessed an implied license, because I created much of the framework while supporting company operations. Naomi printed the letter. Then she circled implied license with a red pen. Translation, I asked. "They don't love their paperwork. Can they win?" "Of course." I frowned. She looked up. "Did you expect me to tell you we're invincible?" "No. Good lawyers who say that are expensive liars." She tapped the agreement. "The facts are useful. Your LLC existed first. Invoices describe version 3 as a Heart Creative deliverable. Draft amendments exist but were never signed. However, conduct matters, payment matters, how the work was commissioned matters. There are arguments on both sides. So we negotiate. Eventually, and before eventually, we request the accounting they owe you, preserve your position, and avoid acting like idiots." The last part was mostly directed at me. I had no intention of becoming an idiot. Ethan was doing enough of that for both of us. 2 days later, Everly announced Madison as Chief Partnerships Officer. The press release called her an architect of Everly's global growth strategy. Rosa sent me a screenshot with 3 question marks. I wrote, "Don't engage publicly." She responded, "I wasn't going to. My blood pressure is already bad." Rosa had joined Everly when the company had 13 employees. She had managed office operations, vendor relationships, customer escalations, and occasionally Ethan's ego. Her retirement plan consisted of ignoring everyone after 6 p.m. At 6:00 for that evening, she called me. "I'm making an exception." "Clearly." "Are you okay?" "Yes." That was too fast. "I've had practice." She paused. I nearly stopped breathing. Then Rosa said, "With Ethan?" "I meant you've had years of practice with Ethan?" "Right. You sound strange." I'm becoming strange. Good normal wasn't helping. I laughed, then she grew serious. You know I'm not sending you company stuff. I know. But I still have my notebooks from the first 2 years. Why? Because your generation thinks the cloud is immortal. Fair. What's in them? Vendor calls, launch dates, who approved what, nothing confidential that isn't mine to keep. Talk to Naomi before you give me anything. I already did. I smiled. Of course she had. 3 days later, the first interesting business consequence appeared, not collapse, a question. Everly was preparing a Series B financing one of the prospective investors, Northbridge Capital, asked for. Updated intellectual property chain of title documents as part of due diligence, standard request, nothing dramatic, except Everly could not provide a clean assignment for assets it had been describing as proprietary. Ethan called me at 8:12 on a Thursday morning. I let it ring twice before answering. What? Can you come in? No. Evelyn, I have work. We need to discuss Compass. There are lawyers for that. Not everything needs lawyers. The last document you personally handed me. Transferred my IP. That was legal's draft. You handed it to me. Silence, then his voice changed. We have investors asking questions. I assumed investors would. Did you contact them? No. Naomi? No. Julian? No. He exhaled. Then how do they know? I almost smiled. Due diligence. He knew that, he just didn't want it to be true. Because if I had sabotaged him, the problem was me. If investors discovered the issue themselves, the problem was governance. Look, he said. Whatever happened between us, I don't want the company damaged. Neither do I. Then help me fix this. I'm trying. By threatening termination. By asking you to comply with a contract. He lowered his voice. Madison thinks this is personal. I'm not negotiating with Madison. She's an officer now. Then she can speak through counsel if appropriate. You hate her. I considered that. No, you expect me to believe that. I don't know her well enough to hate her. She thinks you're trying to punish her. This may surprise both of you, but not everything I do is about your relationship. He was quiet. That sentence finally reached a place the others hadn't. Can we have lunch? He asked. No. Why? Because in my first life I had agreed to lunch, dinner, one last conversation, one more explanation. Every meeting had ended with me giving away another piece of ground, so I said the simplest truth, I don't want to. After I hung up, my hands shook, not because I regretted it, because boundaries were new enough to feel like cruelty. At noon, Julian picked me up outside a client's office. He had texted 30 minutes earlier. Lunch, I answered, only if you let me pay. His reply, I'm a billionaire. Evelyn, this is humiliating, I wrote. Then suffer. We went to a sandwich place. I paid $28. Julian accepted his humiliation with dignity. Halfway through lunch, he said, I have a business question. I narrowed my eyes. That sounds dangerous. Crosswell is building a new independent travel incubator. No. You don't know the question. You're going to offer me money. Yes. No. Would you like to hear the structure before rejecting it? No. He ate a chip. I stared at him. You're irritating. I've been told. I cannot launch a company with you right now. It looks like you're financing revenge. Then don't launch one with me. I blinked. You just said. I said Crosswell is building an incubator. If you ever want funding, I'll introduce you to the investment committee. I won't sit on the committee. You pitch them. They say yes or no. I studied him. No special terms. No. No free office. No. No client introductions that aren't disclosed. He looked offended. Do you think I became rich by giving free offices to women I dated in college? I have no idea how billionaires spend money. Mostly on lawyers and HVAC. That made me laugh. Then he became serious. Evelyn, I know you. The phrase still hit somewhere deep. You're going to build again. I might. When you do, I'd like you to have choices. Not rescue choices. I looked down at my sandwich. What if the committee says no? Then they say no. And you won't override them? No. Even if you're sleeping with me. He choked, actually choked. I passed him water. I'm not sleeping with you. I noticed. My face warmed. Julian coughed again. You did that on purpose. Maybe. He looked at me for a long second. The air between us changed, not dramatic, not yet, but alive then. My phone rang. Naomi, I answered. Hi. Everly cured the unpaid royalties. I sat straighter. All of them. Payment plus their calculation of interest. We reserved disagreement on the amount. So that part's done. For now. And Compass. They're not conceding. Of course not. What next? Negotiation. I looked at Julian. He had deliberately turned his attention toward the window to give me privacy, Naomi continued. And Evelyn? Yes. The investor request created pressure. I assumed. Do not get excited, pressure is not victory. I know. But, I waited, they want mediation. For the first time since the gala, Everly had stopped telling me I had no leverage, now they wanted a table. I hung up. Julian looked at me. Good news. Progress. He lifted his coffee cup. To progress. I tapped mine against it. That evening I opened a blank presentation, not for Everly, for myself. For years I had known exactly what I would build if I stopped spending all my best ideas improving Ethan's company, a membership platform built around smaller independent properties, transparent fees, regional experts, no fake exclusivity, no mass market luxury language, travel designed for people who cared where their money went. I typed a temporary name, North Star House. Then I began at 1:14 a.m. An email arrived from Ethan. Subject: we need to solve this. The body was only 2 lines. I can buy Heart Creative outright. Name your number. I stared at it, then I smiled. In my first life I had begged Ethan to admit my work had value. This time he had done it in writing. I did not name a number. That annoyed Ethan more than any number could have. Naomi responded to his email on my behalf. Heart Creative was not presently for sale. One sentence, no anger, no counteroffer, no opportunity for him to argue me downward. 3 hours later, Ethan called twice. I ignored both calls. By Friday he had his attorney send a formal proposal, $450,000, more than 10 times what I had received in my first life. Naomi read the offer. Not terrible. My stomach twisted. You think I should take it? I think I'm legally obligated to separate not terrible from good for you. She pushed the document toward me. They want everything: existing assets, derivative works, future claims, attribution waivers where enforceable, confidentiality, non-disparagement, broad release. So they're buying certainty. Yes. What's certainty worth? To a company raising tens of millions. She smiled without humor. More. I leaned back. What if I don't want to sell? Then don't. That answer would have seemed impossible in my first life, not because I lacked rights, because I did not believe I was allowed to choose inconvenience over approval. Can I license it? Potentially. Non-exclusive. Potentially. To competitors. Depends on existing restrictions. I nodded. Naomi studied me. You have an idea. I'm building something. Does Julian know? He knows I'm thinking. Is he funding it? No. Good. I frowned. Good. Not because I distrust him, because right now you need to know which decisions are yours. That afternoon I worked from a rented desk in Cambridge. North Star House became less of a revenge fantasy and more of a company. I wrote the business model, then deleted half of it, built unit economics, discovered they were terrible, changed the product, called 3 former travel industry contacts and asked questions without pitching. 2 said consumers were tired of exclusive memberships that mostly offered public rates with pretty photography. 1 told me independent hotels hated platform fees but lacked direct customer acquisition that was useful. By Sunday I had a product, not Everly 2.0, something smaller, sharper, a paid membership connecting travelers directly with independently owned hotels, local guides, and regional cultural operators. North Star would take transparent service fees instead of forcing large commissions. No Compass Index, no Everly client list, no Everly data, a new brand, new system. Mine. On Monday I met the Crosswell Ventures Investment Committee. Julian was not there. I checked twice. It irritated me that I was disappointed. The committee included 3 people: a former hospitality executive, a venture partner, and a finance director who looked at my slides like they had personally insulted her. She asked the hardest questions. How do you acquire customers without burning cash? Initially founder-led partnerships and creator affiliates. That doesn't scale. Not by itself. Your projected retention assumes 28% annual churn. Why? Because I don't trust founders who model 12. The former hospitality executive laughed. The finance director did not. Good. She kept asking. I kept answering. At the end, nobody told me I was brilliant. Nobody said Julian must see something special. They thanked me. 2 days later, I received an email. Crosswell Ventures was interested in a $1.2 million seed investment through a capped safe, contingent on standard diligence and formation of a separate operating entity. I read the term sheet 3 times. Then I called Julian. You stayed out. I told you I would. They offered. I know. You already know. I own the company. Information occasionally reaches me. Did you influence them? No. Not even a little. Evelyn. What? If I wanted to give you money, I would give you money. That sounds terrible. It was supposed to sound reassuring. It didn't. He laughed, then his tone changed. Congratulations. I looked at the term sheet again. My name, founder, CEO, not consultant, not Support, not Ethan's fiancé founder. My vision blurred. I hated that. You okay? Yes. You don't sound okay. I'm tired. Do you want company? There were 100 reasons to say no. I said, yes. Julian arrived 40 minutes later carrying groceries. You cook? No. Then why groceries? You cook? Billionaire abuse. I brought wine. Accepted. We made pasta in my kitchen. Technically, I made pasta. Julian cut garlic and received excessive praise for not injuring himself after dinner. We sat on the floor because I had sold the huge sectional Ethan chose and had not replaced it yet. The old record player Julian returned to me played quietly. For a while, neither of us talked. Then Julian said, you should take the investment only if it's right. I know. Crosswell doesn't need to be involved. I know. You can raise elsewhere. I know. He turned his head. You do that when you're scared. Say I know. Yes, I know. He laughed softly. I looked at him. The years between 24 and 29 seemed suddenly visible, not lost, just present. Why did we really break up? His expression changed. You know why? I know the events. His father had suffered a massive stroke. Julian had left Boston almost overnight. For months he spent most of his time in Seattle and New York, taking control of a company he had never expected to run so young. I was launching Heart Creative. Calls became shorter, visits got cancelled. We fought about things that weren't really the problem. Then one night I told him I could not keep waiting for his life to have room for me. He said he could not ask me to. That was it. No cheating, no betrayal, no villain, just two people too proud to admit they were drowning. I thought you stopped choosing me, I said. Julian stared at the wine in his glass. I thought loving you meant not asking you to wait. That was stupid. Yes, I'm serious, so am I. I smiled despite myself. He looked over. I was 27 and terrified my father was going to die. You were 28. Was I? Yes. That changes everything. I nudged his leg. He grew quiet again. I should have told you I needed you. I should have asked whether you wanted me there instead of waiting for an invitation. He nodded. There it was, reconciliation without rewriting history. We had both failed. We had both loved each other. Both could be true. Julian reached for his glass. I said, I'm considering the investment. His hand stopped. Okay. But I need a condition. What? You do not intervene in North Star operations because we're dating. His eyebrows rose. We're dating. My mouth opened. I had walked into that. Julian leaned back against the cabinet. This is an important development. Don't be annoying. I'm trying to clarify the governance framework. I laughed. Then he looked at me differently. Are we? The room went very quiet. I could have avoided the question. Instead I said, I think I'd like to try. Something warm moved across his face. Not triumph, relief. Try what? Dating. Just to be clear. Julian. I've waited 5 years. I want accurate minutes. I shook my head. One date. We already had dinner. That was not a date. What was it? Post-betrayal pasta. Very specific category. Friday. Friday. No private jet. He looked disappointed. No buying the restaurant. Harsh. No marriage proposal. That one softened him. All right. He put down his glass. One real date. One. And afterward. We decide whether we want another. Julian nodded. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression flattened. What? He turned the screen toward me. A financial news alert. Everly Series B reportedly delayed amid due diligence questions. My stomach dropped. I read the headline twice. Did this come from you? No. Your people? No. I reached for my phone. 3 missed calls. Ethan. 2 from Martin. 1 from an unknown number. Then a text. Ethan, what the hell did you do? I stared at it. The old Evelyn would have panicked. She would have called immediately, explained. Apologized, fixed. Instead, I handed the phone to Julian. He read the message. What are you going to say? I took the phone back. Nothing tonight. That was new too. Not every fire was mine across town. Everly's funding round had begun to shake, and for once I was going to let Ethan learn whether he knew how to put out a fire without me. Everly did not collapse. That mattered. Real companies rarely disappear because one headline makes the founder uncomfortable. People showed up Monday, customers booked trips, employees ran meetings, payroll cleared. Ethan posted an upbeat message on LinkedIn about exciting momentum. Madison reposted it with a blue heart. Then Northbridge Capital extended its diligence timeline. That mattered more. A delayed financing round increased uncertainty. Uncertainty made senior hires nervous. Vendors asked more questions. Board members wanted updates. And when a company's growth strategy required constant cash, Time itself became expensive. Naomi warned me not to confuse pressure with leverage we legally possessed. Our dispute is one diligence issue, she said. Not necessarily the issue. What else is happening? Not our business unless it becomes relevant. I agreed. Mostly Rosa supplied her early notebooks through Naomi. They confirmed dates I already remembered. Heart Creative had created the first destination libraries before Everly hired an editorial team. Invoices showed separate payments. Meeting notes showed Ethan describing the materials as Evelyn's system during the early years. Useful, not magical. Theo did not contact me again. I was grateful. Then Madison made a mistake, not an illegal one, a strategic one. Everly announced 6 new exclusive hotel partnerships in Southern Europe. The press release sounded impressive. Within 48 hours, 2 hotel groups clarified publicly that they had only signed non-binding letters of intent. Travel industry reporters noticed the story was small, but investors noticed small things. I called nobody. I posted nothing. I was in New York interviewing a product lead for North Star when the article appeared. Julian sent me the link with one message. Not your circus, I wrote back. Unfortunately, I designed some of the tent. He answered, fair. North Star consumed me quickly. We incorporated in Delaware, opened business accounts, hired outside counsel, built a data policy before collecting a single customer profile. That decision costs money. It also let me sleep. I brought in a former product manager named Lila Singh as my first employee. She rejected my initial onboarding deck. This has 12 principles, so no company has 12 principles. We do. No, you have 12 things you're anxious about. I stared at her. She deleted 8. I gave her equity. On Friday, Julian took me on our first official date. He did not use a private jet. He did something worse. He remembered everything. The tiny bookstore where we used to hide during winter, the Vietnamese place where we once split one bowl of pho because we were both broke, the bench beside the Charles where he first told me he wanted to build hotels instead of inherit them. You planned a nostalgia tour, I said. I prefer historically informed programming. You own a tourism company. That language should be illegal. We ended the night at a small jazz club, no VIP table, no press. Julian sat close enough that his knee touched mine. Halfway through the second set, I realized I had not thought about Ethan for nearly 2 hours. The realization frightened me more than thinking about him. Had loss could become identity, so could revenge if Ethan stopped mattering. Who was I in this second life? Julian noticed my expression. You left? What? Mentally. Sorry. You don't have to apologize. I looked at the stage. I spent 6 years angry at him. Julian did not ask who he knew in another life. He asked gently. My breath caught. I turned. He smiled slightly. You say things like that sometimes. I looked away. Figure of speech. Okay. He let me keep the lie. That kindness nearly made me tell him the truth. Instead I said, what happens when I'm not angry anymore? With Ethan? With everything. Julian considered. Probably something inconvenient, such as, you might have to decide what you like. I frowned. That's your wisdom. It's expensive wisdom. I laughed. He leaned closer. You built a lot of your life around being useful to people. The laughter stopped. How do you know that? Because you used to reorganize my kitchen when you were stressed. That was because your kitchen was insane. It was alphabetical. You put olive oil under O. It begins with O. You're proving my point. He smiled, then his expression softened. You don't have to be useful to me. I looked down. That was harder to hear than I expected. What do I have to be? Here. The band shifted into a slower song. I watched him 5 years ago, or 3 weeks ago, depending on which life I count it. Julian had proposed marriage. Tonight he had not mentioned it once. I touched his hand just lightly. His fingers turned beneath mine. Neither of us moved closer. It was somehow more intimate than a kiss. On Monday, Everly's board requested mediation within 2 weeks. Naomi booked a conference room. This may settle, she said. What does settle mean? Money, license terms, attribution, releases, maybe equity clarification. Can I keep Compass? That's what we argue. What if they offer enough to buy it? She watched me. I don't know. Good. Answer. By then North Star had passed diligence. I signed the Crosswell Ventures investment documents. Julian was disclosed as a related personal relationship in the committee materials. An independent committee approved the investment. Embarrassing, necessary, correct? I respected him more for insisting on it. Then, 3 days before mediation, Ethan showed up at my new office. The office barely qualified as 2 rooms in Cambridge, 6 desks, 1 ugly couch, a whiteboard covered in hotel names. Ethan stood in the doorway wearing the expensive gray coat I bought him the previous Christmas. For 1 second my body remembered being engaged to him, then it passed. You can't be here without an appointment, I said. Lila looked up from her desk. Do I call someone? No. Ethan looked around. So this is North Star. Yes. Cross is funding you. Crosswell Ventures invested. Same thing. No, it isn't. His jaw tightened. Can we talk? I looked at Lila. 10 minutes. She checked her watch theatrically. I'll start timing. I let Ethan into the tiny meeting room. He closed the door. Madison's getting destroyed online. I blinked. That's why you came. People think she lied about partnerships. Did she? They were advanced discussions. The hotel said they were non-binding LOIs. That doesn't mean nothing was happening. I didn't write the article. You know people in that industry. So do you? He paced once. You could publicly say the IP dispute is just a commercial disagreement. It is a commercial disagreement. Then say it. Why? Because people are connecting everything. I stared at him. You want me to defend the woman you proposed to while I was still your fiancé? When you put it like that. There is no other way to put it. He ran a hand through his hair. You're enjoying this? No? I don't believe you. I thought about it, then answered honestly. I enjoyed watching you realize I wasn't going to fix it for you. He flinched. That part, yes. His face hardened. So this is revenge? No. You launched a competing company with Julian Cross. North Star's business model is different. You hired people from the same sector. It's a sector. You're using everything you learned at Everly. I'm using everything I learned in my career, which I gave you. The room went completely still. Ethan heard it too, the sentence, the arrogance. For years I had built the company beside him, now under pressure. He had finally said what he believed. He had given me my career. I stood. 10 minutes is over. Evelyn. Leave. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. He blocked the door for half a second, then stepped away. Do you love him? The question surprised me. Julian. I know who you mean. Do you? I looked at Ethan, at the man I had once planned to marry in my first life. I would have given anything to hear jealousy in his voice. Now it only made me tired. I don't know yet. That answer hurt him more than yes, because it meant I was building something he could not define. Before he left, he turned. Madison thinks you always wanted Julian. I almost laughed. Madison should spend less time thinking about me. Did you? I paused. There was no reason to lie. I never completely stopped loving him. Ethan's face went pale. For once there was nothing strategic in his expression, just pain, real pain. I felt it. I did not enjoy it. That was how I knew I was finally free of the worst part of us. I no longer needed him to suffer enough to justify what he had done. He left. Lila looked at the clock. 11 minutes, 42 seconds. Fire me. I have equity. That seems counterproductive. My phone buzzed. Julian, dinner tonight. I stared at the message, then at the closed office door. My old life had been built around a man who expected me to stay useful after he stopped choosing me. My new one was slowly filling with people who let me choose. I wrote, yes, and for the first time the answer had nothing to do with Ethan. Mediation began at 9 in the morning and felt like waiting for delayed surgery. 2 conference rooms, 2 legal teams, 1 neutral mediator carrying proposals back and forth while everyone drank too much coffee. Ethan sat across the hall with his lawyers. Madison was not there. Neither was Julian. Naomi had been extremely clear about that. This is your dispute. I know. And if Mr. Cross comes anywhere near this floor, I will personally send him home. He's in Chicago. Excellent. The first Everly offer was $650,000 for a complete assignment of Hart Creative's relevant IP and a mutual release. I said no. The second was $900,000 plus acceleration of my remaining equity milestone. I said no again. Naomi did not celebrate. Explain why. I want recognition of my existing 6% full payment reconciliation. I want Compass 3 excluded from any assignment unless separately valued. And I want the right to continue developing future methods that don't use Everly confidential information. Good. She wrote, what number? I don't know. You need to. We worked through valuations. Not fantasy numbers, expected litigation cost, financing risk, commercial value. The fact that Everly had a plausible implied license defense, my own need for capital, time by 4 p.m. The numbers became real. $175 million confirmation of my vested shares. A paid 5-year exclusive license for certain legacy brand assets. Hart Creative retained ownership. Compass 3 would be licensed for 2 years, not assigned after that. Everly could either negotiate renewal or migrate to a replacement system. My attribution would be preserved in specified historical records. Mutual confidentiality on settlement terms. Mutual non-disparagement with standard legal carve-outs. It was a good deal. I still hesitated. Naomi noticed. What's wrong? In my first life I signed for 40,000. She stared. I had slipped again. In your what? I closed my eyes. Forget it. No. Naomi. She put down her pen. You've been saying things like that for weeks. I looked at my best friend. There are lies that protect privacy, then there are lies that isolate you. I was tired of both, so in a conference room during a multimillion-dollar IP mediation, I told Naomi-chan that I had already lived the next 6 years. Once I expected skepticism, maybe concern, possibly a psychiatric referral. Instead, when I finished, she sat completely still. Then she said, "What happens to me?" I stared at her. Seriously. If you know the future, I have questions. You make partner. Her eyes widened. At Morrison? No, you leave. Good. You start your own firm? Excellent. You marry Daniel. She dropped her pen. The dermatologist? Yes. I've had 2 dates with him. You have a daughter. Naomi looked like she might cry, then she immediately looked angry, about almost crying. That is highly manipulative information. I know. Do I want to know more? I don't know. She sat back for several seconds. Neither of us spoke. Finally she said, "Okay. Okay. I don't understand it." Neither do I. I believe that you believe it. That's very lawyerly. And I also know you have behaved like a woman who already knows where every landmine is buried. I exhaled. She picked up the settlement sheet. So 40,000, yes. And no equity recognition. Gone. Compass. Gone. Your reputation. Destroyed. Naomi's mouth tightened. Then I understand why 1.75 feels impossible. It feels like I cheated. No. Her voice sharpened. You made different decisions. I knew what would happen. You knew what might happen based on the prior decisions. That isn't the same thing. I stared at the table. What if I'm ruining their company? Are you forcing them to settle? No. Did you fabricate the contracts? No. Did you leak diligence information? No. Did you tell Madison to describe LOIs as partnerships? No. Then stop trying to be morally responsible for every consequence around you. That sentence sounded like something Julian would say. I hated that everyone I respected had apparently formed a committee. We settled at 6:40 p.m. Not fully. A term sheet, final documents would take weeks, but the economics and major legal points were agreed. When I walked into the hallway, Ethan was there. No lawyers, no mediator, just him. We did it, he said. The old instinct tried to interpret we as intimacy. I let it pass. Yes. He looked exhausted. So that's it. Mostly. Compass stays yours. Yes. That bothers me. I know. He gave a tired laugh. Do you? Yes. He leaned against the wall. I should have fixed the agreements years ago. Yes. I kept thinking there'd be time. I said nothing. He looked at me. You know what I hate? What? You were right about almost everything. That must be difficult. He smiled despite himself, then the smile disappeared. I don't mean this, he gestured between us. I mean the business, the brand, customer acquisition, retention. Madison wants us to move faster. You always wanted us to slow down. Sometimes. I thought you were scared. I was. Maybe fear was useful. Sometimes. He looked down. For a moment he resembled the man I had once loved, not the founder, not the betrayer, a tired 31-year-old who had built something too large to control cleanly. I miss you, he said. There it was, quiet, almost honest. I did not answer immediately. I miss who we were at 25. His eyes lifted. That's not the same thing. No. Could it ever be? No. The certainty surprised both of us. Ethan swallowed. Because of Julian. Because of us. That was the truth he had avoided. From the beginning, Julian did not end our relationship. Madison did not end it. The proposal exposed something already broken. I walked away outside. Boston was cold enough to turn my breath white. Julian was not waiting. I had asked him not to. I called him anyway. He answered on the first ring. How did it go? Term sheet. Good. Good. Are you okay? Yes, a beat. No. Where are you? I gave him the address. I'll come. You're in Chicago? I landed 20 minutes ago. Of course he had. 25 minutes later, a black SUV stopped near the curb. Julian got out alone. I was still standing outside. He looked at me. No questions, no congratulations. I stepped forward and kissed him. For 1 second, he did not move. Then his hand came carefully to the side of my face, not my waist, not my back, my face, as though he was making sure I was real. I kissed him harder. He pulled away first, barely. Evelyn, what? I'm trying to be responsible. That seems unlike you. I proposed to an engaged woman. True. I'm working on myself. I laughed against his mouth, then I rested my forehead against his. I chose the settlement. Okay. I chose North Star. Yes. I'm choosing this too. His eyes closed for half a second. When they opened, something in them made my chest ache. Then I'm going to kiss you again. Good governance. Extremely, he did. This time I stopped thinking about who might see. The first public attack came from a source close to Everly. It described me as a disgruntled former consultant who had raised intellectual property claims immediately after the company's CEO ended their engagement. Technically, every phrase had enough truth to become dangerous. Disgruntled, former consultant immediately after. That was how reputational attacks worked when lawyers were involved. Nobody needed to say you were lying, they only needed to arrange facts in the worst possible order. Naomi called me at 6:30 a.m. Do not post. I'm not posting. Do not like anything. I'm not liking anything. Do not send a cryptic quote about karma. Have I ever done that? People become embarrassing after breakups. I died once. I have perspective. There was a pause. I'm still adjusting to that sentence. The article spread through the travel tech world. North Star's investors called, not to withdraw, to ask questions. That was reasonable. I answered them. I disclosed the mediation, the term sheet, the fact that North Star had not used Everly confidential data or licensed Compass versions. Then one of our first hotel prospects paused negotiations, not cancelled. Pause that hurt more than online comments. Real consequences always did. Lila walked into my office and shut the door. Are we in trouble? Not existentially. That is not comforting. We may lose Harbor House. Because of the article. Yes, she sat down. What are we doing? Nothing publicly yet. That sounds weak. It may be. She waited. I looked at her. Do you think we should respond? I think our partners need to know whether the story is true. They already received disclosures. I mean normal humans, Evelyn, not lawyers. Fair, so we wrote a statement for sentences. I had been a long-term consultant to Everly and owner of Heart Creative. A commercial IP dispute had arisen following the end of my engagement to Everly's CEO. The parties had reached agreement in principle through mediation. North Star was independently built and operated. No accusations, no screenshots, no public autopsy of a 6-year relationship. Julian read it only after my counsel approved it. His response was good. I called him. That's all. What do you want me to say? That it's powerful. It isn't. Thank you. It's boring. I hate you. Boring is excellent legal strategy. Naomi had apparently infected him. The statement did not go viral. That was the point. 2 days later, Rosa called. I know where the story came from. My stomach tightened. How? Someone in communications is upset. Rosa. I didn't ask. Do not send me names. I'm not. Do not investigate. I'm not. Good. But Madison approved talking points about you. I closed my eyes. Can you prove that legally? No? Then I don't know it. Rosa groaned. You're becoming Naomi. I know. Terrible. The bigger problem was Everly itself. Northbridge Capital had not walked away, but negotiations slowed further. Another investor requested updated churn data. That was when the next issue emerged. Everly's customer retention had weakened over the previous 2 quarters, not catastrophically enough to matter. In my first life I had fixed that. I remembered the campaign, the segmented reactivation strategy, the revised onboarding, the hotel credit model. I had worked 6 weeks straight. This time I wasn't there. For days I struggled with the knowledge. I knew how to help. More than that, I knew what would work. Every instinct screamed to send Martin a message. Not Ethan, just Martin. One spreadsheet, one suggestion, one familiar rescue. Instead I called Julian. I'm having a problem. What kind? I know how to fix Everly's retention. Silence, then carefully. And I want to tell them. Why? Because people work there. That's true. Rosa works there. Yes. Theo. Yes. If the company gets hurt, employees get hurt. Yes. I waited for him to tell me not to. He didn't. What do you think you should do? He asked. I hate that question. I know. I could send general advice. Would that violate anything? Probably not, but Naomi would kill me. Then perhaps. Start there. I don't want the company to fail. That's different from wanting Ethan to succeed. I sat with that. Julian continued. You can care about people without returning to the role that exhausted you. I rubbed my eyes. I don't know how. You're learning. The next morning I called Rosa, not Ethan. I need you to be honest. Are you worried about layoffs? Yes. How worried? Not tomorrow, but if financing drags, they'll reduce burn. Are you personally okay? I have savings. Theo? He's interviewing elsewhere. Good, I breathed. Listen to me, if you ever need a reference, call. Rosa went quiet. You're not coming back. No? I didn't ask. You were thinking it. I was. I can't save Everly. No, honey. Her voice softened. You already gave it 6 years. I cried after that call. Not dramatically, no shattered glasses, no collapsing on the floor. I sat at my desk with tears running down my face while an unread hotel contract waited on my screen. Lila entered, saw me, backed out, then reappeared with tissues. Founder emergency. Former founder adjacent emotional malfunction. That sounds billable. I laughed while crying. She left me alone that afternoon. Harbor House resumed negotiations with Northstar. Our statement had helped, so had our legal diligence package. A week later they signed our first anchor hotel group, 8 properties, small by Everly standards, huge by ours. We opened cheap champagne in paper cups. At 8 that night everyone left. Julian arrived carrying takeout. He looked at the empty bottle. Celebrating without me? You have your own companies. None invited me for paper cup champagne. You should improve your culture. He sat on the ugly couch. I joined him. My mother wants to meet you, he said. I froze. Julian noticed. Not tomorrow. Good. She heard we're dating. How? My sister. I haven't met your sister. She is efficient. I remember. He looked at me. Do you? Too fast. I recovered. From before? Right, from before, not from the life where I attended his mother's funeral through a live stream because I was too ashamed to call. Julian took my hand. What? I looked at him. Nothing. Evelyn, I took a breath. Your mother is going to be okay. His brow furrowed. What does that mean? The words had escaped. His mother's cancer diagnosis would come next year. In my first life, she survived 18 months. Not enough. My chest tightened. Julian's expression sharpened. What aren't you telling me? I stared at our hands. The rebirth had given me leverage. It had also given me information I had no idea how to carry ethically. Finally I said, ask your mother to keep her annual physical. What? Please. Fear appeared in his face. Evelyn, I can't explain this tonight. Is she sick? I don't know that she is sick now. That was technically true. Then why? Please. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Guilt followed immediately. Maybe I had changed something good. Maybe I had saved time. Maybe I had only frightened him. There was no manual for being reborn. I leaned against him. For once Julian did not ask for an explanation. He simply held my hand. 3 weeks later, his mother scheduled an overdue screening. A small abnormality was found early, treatable. Julian called me from the hospital parking lot. His voice shook. How did you know? I closed my eyes. There are moments when a second life stops feeling like an advantage. This was one. I think it's time I told you the truth. Julian listened without interrupting. That frightened me more than disbelief would have. We sat in his apartment overlooking the Charles. I told him about the rain, the accident, waking up, Ethan's proposal, Everly, his mother, and him, especially him. I knew you would expand Crosswell into Europe, I said. He stared at the floor. I knew your mother would get sick. His hands tightened. I knew Naomi would leave Morrison and start her own firm. You told Naomi? Yes. Does she believe you? Enough. He stood, walked to the windows, then back. Say something. I don't know what to say. That's fair. Did we? He stopped. What? In that life, did you and I ever? No. The answer hurt him. I could see it. We barely spoke. Why? Because I stayed with Ethan too long. Then after everything collapsed, I was ashamed. Of what? My life. His face changed. Evelyn. I know? No, you don't? I do now. He walked toward me, then stopped a few feet away. Did I marry? No. He stared. Anyone? No. Did I ask you again? I don't know. What does that mean? You tried to contact me after the Everly settlement, and I ignored you. He closed his eyes. I was angry at everyone. Did I stop? Eventually. That landed heavily between us. Julian sat down again. So I lose 6 years too. I had not thought of it that way. My throat tightened. I'm sorry. He shook his head. You didn't do this. I abandoned you twice. You died. Before that, he looked at me. Did you love Ethan? Yes. The answer was easy. Julian flinched anyway. I did deeply. He nodded. I need the truth. I know. And now? No. Because he betrayed you. Partly. Because you know the future. Partly. I leaned forward. But mostly because I finally understand what our relationship became. Julian was quiet. I continued, I don't want to replace Ethan with you. I know. No, I need you to really hear me. I loved you before him. I probably never completely stopped, but if we do this, I need it to be this life. His eyes lifted. Not because I know what happens to you. Yes. Not because you know what Ethan becomes. Yes. Not because I'm safer. I swallowed. Yes. Julian leaned back. This is the strangest relationship conversation I've ever had. That seems reasonable. His mouth almost smiled, then he asked, what else happens? I don't want to tell you. Why? Because I've already changed things. My mother. Yes. She might live longer. Maybe. That isn't a reason to regret telling me. I don't regret that. What do you regret? I thought about Everly. Had I destroyed Ethan's future? No, the company still existed, but it was becoming different. Northbridge eventually withdrew from leading the Series B. That happened 2 days after my conversation with Julian. Not solely because of me. Their internal memo, later summarized by business press, cited several reasons: weakening retention, partnership reporting concerns, governance, leadership transition, and unresolved long-term dependency on licensed third-party IP. I was one factor, not the whole story. That distinction freed me. Everly secured a smaller bridge round from existing investors instead. The valuation was lower, hiring froze, expansion slowed, nobody vanished, no one was arrested, no billion-dollar company exploded overnight. Ethan faced something worse for a man like him, consequences that could not be blamed on one enemy. The board hired an experienced COO. Madison lost responsibility for investor communications. She remained at Everly. Ethan remained CEO. But the mythology around him cracked. He had built a company. He had also ignored systems that made it stable. Both were true. One afternoon, Theo came to Northstar for an interview. Not with me, with Lila. We handled it properly. He had resigned from Everly 3 weeks earlier. No poaching, no confidential information. After Lila completed the formal interview, Theo asked whether he could speak to me. We sat in the kitchen area. You look different, he said. Better or worse? Less tired. I'll take it. He nodded, then hesitated. I wanted to tell you something. If it's confidential to Everly, don't. It isn't. I waited. Ethan knew about Compass. My pulse slowed. How do you know? Last year, during the product migration, legal asked whether version 3 had a signed amendment. I was in the meeting because I maintain the scoring implementation. And Ethan said, Evelyn isn't going anywhere. Fix it after the raise. I closed my eyes. There it was, not a secret criminal plot, something more ordinary. He knew. He simply believed my love made paperwork unnecessary. Did anyone document that? I don't know. Then don't repeat it as fact outside this conversation. Theo frowned. That's it. What else should I do? Be angry. I am. I was, but anger had changed shape. It no longer needed an audience. That night, Ethan emailed, not about business. Subject: I'm sorry. I did not open it until the next morning. The message was long. He admitted he had known the Heart Creative documents needed to be updated. He said he had assumed we would get married and combine our lives anyway. He admitted that he had used that assumption to postpone decisions. He apologized for proposing to Madison publicly before formally ending our engagement. Then he wrote, I thought because you were always there, you always would be. I read that line 4 times, not because it made me want him back, because it finally named the relationship. He had mistaken consistency for permanence. My loyalty had taught him that losing me was impossible. In my first life, I spent years trying to understand why my sacrifice had not made him value me more. Now I knew. Sometimes endless sacrifice teaches the opposite lesson, that you require nothing. I forwarded the business-relevant paragraph to Naomi. Then I archived the rest. No reply. Julian came over that evening. He found me sitting on the kitchen counter eating cereal. Successful founder dinner. Extremely. He opened the refrigerator. There is nothing in here. Cereal. That is not in the refrigerator. Milk. He looked at me. Technicality. I watched him. He had spent the last week processing the fact that his girlfriend had died once. He had asked surprisingly few questions. Tonight he closed the refrigerator and came to stand in front of me. I've decided something. What? I don't want future information. I blinked. None. Nothing about markets, acquisitions, people, me. What about health? If it's urgent and preventable, use judgment. That is terrifyingly vague. I trust you. I looked down. He touched my knee. I want this life too. My throat tightened. I'm scared I'll make the wrong changes. You will. I frowned. Comforting. So will I. His hand moved into mine. That's what a life is. No advanced knowledge could make love risk-free. That might have been the hardest lesson of all. I leaned down and kissed him for the first time since waking again. I did not think about what would happen next. The final Everly settlement was signed. 4 months after the gala, the wire arrived on a Tuesday. $175 million less fees and taxes that Naomi repeatedly reminded me were real. My vested equity remained mine. Heart Creative retained the core IP. Everly received contractual rights to keep using agreed legacy assets for defined periods. Compass version 3 would remain exclusively licensed to Everly for 2 years. After that, they could renew at market terms or replace it. No public victory speech, no champagne sprayed across a courtroom. I signed electronically at my desk between a product meeting and a call with a hotel owner in Maine. Naomi called afterward, "You're done with the case, with this phase?" I looked through the glass wall at the North Star team. 12 people now, too many laptops, not enough chairs. Lila arguing with a designer over font sizes. Theo, who we eventually hired after a clean separation process, explaining conversion cohorts to someone who regretted asking. North Star had 2,800 paying members. 23 hotel partners, small, real. Mine. I thought I'd feel more, I said. Naomi laughed. Everyone thinks settlements feel cinematic. What do they feel like? Administrative relief. That's exactly it. Congratulations on your administrative relief. Thank you. Then she added, Daniel asked me to dinner. I smiled. The dermatologist. Silence. You are never allowed to call him that again. I support love. You support spoilers. I laughed after we hung up. Some parts of the future were arriving. Anyway, others had already changed. Julian's mother completed treatment after the early finding. Her prognosis was excellent. Crosswell delayed its European expansion by a year after Julian chose to spend more time in Boston. North Star took a second investment from an outside fund, reducing Crosswell Ventures' influence, and Ethan did not marry Madison, at least not when he had in My First Life. 3 months after the proposal, the wedding date was postponed. Business press did not care. Startup gossip did. I refused to read it. Rosa failed to respect that boundary and sent me a screenshot. I replied, "Stop," she answered. "I'm old, I have hobbies." Madison eventually left Everly, officially for a new opportunity. Unofficially, according to things I refused to ask about, the relationship between her and Ethan had deteriorated under the pressure of fundraising and board oversight. I felt no satisfaction. That bothered me briefly. Then I realized indifference was the better ending. One Friday night, Julian and I had dinner with his mother, Eleanor. She was 63, elegant, observant, and apparently born without the gene that allowed normal small talk. Halfway through dessert she asked me, "Are you going to marry my son?" Julian nearly dropped his fork. "Mother? What?" Eleanor looked innocent. "You proposed already," she told him. "Several months ago. This cannot be private forever if you keep telling your sister everything." I looked at Julian. "You told your sister." I was distressed. "You're a 34-year-old CEO. I contain multitudes." Eleanor looked at me. "He's been impossible since college." "I know." Julian pointed at both of us. "This alliance is concerning." Eleanor smiled, then her expression softened. "You don't have to answer my question. Thank you. I simply wanted you to know that I'm not in a hurry." Julian stared at her. "You opened with, 'Are you going to marry my son?' I said I'm not in a hurry. I didn't say I lack curiosity." I liked her immediately. Later, Julian drove me home at a red light. He said, "Sorry." "For what?" "My mother. I liked her. Dangerous. She likes me. She likes anyone who argues with me. Smart woman." The light changed. We drove another block. Then Julian said, "You never answered her." I looked over. He kept his eyes on the road. "Is this a stealth proposal?" "No. Because the rule was no surprise proposals." "You made that rule after I already proposed." "Exactly. I'm asking whether marriage is still something you might want." My answer did not come immediately. Not because I didn't love him. I did. That had become frighteningly clear. I loved his terrible coffee, his obsessive calendar, the way he always asked whether I wanted advice before giving it, the way he had never once asked me to make North Star smaller so our relationship would be easier. I loved him differently than I had at 24, less desperately, more accurately, but marriage still carried echoes, a venue deposit, a ring, a man assuming I would always be there. "Yes," I said finally. Julian glanced at me. "Yes. Marriage is something I might want." "With me?" "No, a random orthodontist." He laughed. "I'm trying to communicate responsibly." "With you?" His hand tightened on the steering wheel. I reached over and touched his arm. "But not yet." He nodded immediately. "Okay." No disappointment. Of course I'm disappointed, I smiled. I'm not going to make disappointment your problem. That sentence so simple, so different. I leaned back. Give me time. All of it. A week later, Ethan asked to meet me. I nearly said no, then I thought about the life I had lived before. There were still words buried there. Not because he deserved them, because I wanted to stop carrying them. We met in a coffee shop in Seaport, public daylight, no lawyers necessary. He looked older, not dramatically, just tired. Everly's bridge round had stabilized the company, but its growth expectations were lower. The board had become more involved. Ethan was still wealthy on paper, still successful by almost any normal measure. He simply was no longer the myth he once thought he was becoming. Thanks for coming, he said. You said you wanted closure. He smiled weakly. I hate that word. Most people who need it do. For a while we talked about practical things, a storage unit, old photographs, 2 pieces of furniture still technically shared. Then Ethan looked at me. Are you marrying him? Not now. But eventually. Maybe. He looked down. Madison and I ended things. I heard. Rosa. Rosa. A real laugh escaped him. I miss her. She still works for you? She treats me like I'm 12. You earned that. He nodded, then his face grew serious. I owe you an apology. That isn't about contracts. I waited. I knew I was falling in love with Madison again before the gala. Yes. I kept telling myself you and I were basically over. We weren't. I know. I asked you 2 weeks before whether we should move the wedding earlier. His eyes closed. I remember. You said yes. I know. And then you proposed to her. I know. The repetition was painful. Good, some truth should be. Why? I asked. He took a long breath. Because I wanted both versions of my life until one became impossible. There it was, more honest than anything he had ever said. You were stability, he continued. History, work, home. Madison made me feel like I was 21 again before Everly became responsibility. You chose excitement. Yes. And expected stability to remain available. His mouth tightened. Yes. I nodded. Finally, not satisfaction, understanding. I forgive you. His head lifted. I had not planned to say it, but once spoken it felt right. Not absolution, release. I don't think what you did was okay, I said. I don't think we should be friends. I don't want you back. His eyes glistened. But I forgive you. Why? Because I had already hated him through one entire lifetime. Because punishment had become boring. Because I wanted my future to contain fewer ghosts, I said. Because I'm done paying interest on what you did. Ethan looked down. We sat silently for a while, then I stood. He did too. Evelyn. Yes. I really did love you. I believed him. That was the final surprise. I know. Then I walked away, not angry, not triumphant, just finished. The first anniversary of my second life arrived quietly. October 18. North Star had 38 hotel partners and just over 9,000 members. Still not a unicorn, thank God. I had developed a severe allergy to founders who talked about unicorns before. Profitability. Lila gave me a cake at work, across the top in blue icing. She had written, "Congrats on not imploding." Beautiful, I said. I considered 1 year without founder fraud. Legal advised against it. Naomi. No common sense. Theo took a picture at 6. I left early. That alone would have been impossible in my first life. Julian waited outside. Where are we going? Dinner. Suspicious. You requested no surprise proposals. I did. So no proposal. I narrowed my eyes. Why did you say it like that? Because you're paranoid. We drove out of Boston, north then east. By the time we reached the coast, the sun had dropped low over the Atlantic. Julian parked outside a small inn. Not a Crosswell property, I checked. He looked offended. You Googled ownership. Yes. You have trust issues. Correct? We ate dinner on a covered terrace with heaters. Afterward, we walked down toward the water. October wind pushed my hair into my face. Julian handed me a knit hat from his pocket. You brought this. You never dress for weather. You sound 70. I feel 70. I put it on. We walked in silence. A year ago, Ethan had been kneeling beneath chandeliers. A year ago, I had been 29 and 35 at the same time. A year ago, Julian's unanswered proposal had felt like another emergency. Tonight, nothing felt urgent. That was the greatest luxury I had ever known. Julian stopped near a wooden railing. I lied. I looked at him. About no surprise proposal. Julian. I'm not proposing. Then what did you lie about? I brought the ring. I stared. He took a small box from his coat. My heart began beating hard. You said you're not proposing. I'm not. He placed the box in my hand. What is wrong with you? Several things. I opened it. The ring was not enormous, that surprised me, a simple oval diamond set low on a thin band, beautiful wearable, nothing like the diamond Ethan once gave Madison. I bought this 7 months ago, Julian said. I looked up. 7? I am patient, not sane. I laughed. He continued. I don't want you to say yes tonight because it's October 18th. I don't want our anniversary to be the day someone else hurt you. My eyes burned, so why show me? Because I want you to know I'm still here. I looked down at the ring. You could have just told me. I did repeatedly. True. And because I'd like you to decide what proposal you want. What? Private, public, home, travel, your office, my office, no kneeling, family, no family. I stared at him. You're outsourcing your proposal to me. I'm preventing avoidable dissatisfaction. Romance is dead. I run companies, planning is love. I laughed so hard I had to hold the railing. When I finally stopped, Julian was smiling. Not the polished smile he gave cameras, the younger one, the one I remembered from 23. I want quiet, I said. His smile faded into attention. No people. Okay. No photographer hiding somewhere. Understood. No giant flowers. Fine. No newspaper article. I can't fully control newspapers. You know what I mean. I do. I closed the box. And don't ask me until you're okay with the possibility that I might still say not yet. Julian's expression softened. I was okay with that before I bought the ring. I handed it back, he put it away, then we kept walking. That was all, no engagement that night. And because there wasn't, I knew I was ready. 3 months later, North Star reached operating break even in one region. I cried harder over that spreadsheet than I had over the settlement. Julian came to the office with champagne, real glasses this time. Lila made a speech. Against my expectations, Evelyn has learned to delegate approximately 14% of her personality. Everyone applauded. I threw a napkin at her. Afterward, when the office emptied, Julian and I sat on the ugly couch. We had refused to replace it because it had become a joke. You know, he said. Croswell can afford furniture. North Star can afford furniture. Then why do you still have this culture? It's damaging my spine. Sacrifice. He leaned his head back. Are you happy? The question surprised me. I thought about it seriously. Yes. Not every day, not perfectly, but yes. Are you? Yes. I rested my head on his shoulder. A few minutes later, he said, Eleanor invited you to Christmas. I know. She didn't invite me. It's my family now. Disturbing. I smiled. Somewhere during the year, my life stopped feeling borrowed. That mattered more than getting. Even in my first life, every future plan had Ethan inside it. Then when he disappeared, I thought the future disappeared too. Now I understood the future had never belonged to a person. It belonged to whoever was still willing to build it. Julian proposed again on a Sunday morning in April. No restaurant, no hotel, no yacht, no boardroom. I was barefoot in my kitchen making coffee. He was ruining eggs. You know, I said. For someone who owns hospitality companies, you are shockingly bad at breakfast. Delegation? You can't delegate eggs in my apartment. Then I questioned this relationship. I turned toward the cabinet behind me. The stove clicked off. I assumed he had finally surrendered. Then he said, Evelyn. Something in his voice made me stop. I turned. Julian was standing beside the kitchen island, not kneeling. The ring box was in his hand. My chest went tight. You said quiet, he said. I looked around. Morning sunlight, 2 coffee mugs, 1 pan of ruined eggs. No audience, no performance, quiet. I did. He came closer. I asked you once when your life was tangled with someone else's. Yes. That was unfair. A little. I'm asking again now because I know exactly who you are when nobody needs rescuing. My eyes filled. Julian opened the box. I love the woman I knew at 23. He looked at me. And I love the woman you became when I wasn't there to see it. My throat closed. I love North Star taking half your attention. I love that you correct me in front of my executives. I love that you still think olive oil should not be alphabetized under O. It shouldn't. I know. You do not. Evelyn. I laughed through tears. His expression softened. I don't need forever to repay the years we missed. I don't need you to promise nothing bad will happen. He took my hand. I just want the ordinary days we get. That was what finally broke me. Not billionaire, not diamond, not victory. Ordinary days, the thing my first life had never taught me to value until I ran out of them. Julian took one breath. Will you marry me? I looked at the man I had loved twice, once too young, once after death. Yes. His eyes closed just for a second. You're sure? I laughed. Do not ruin this, right? Yes, Julian. This time he smiled. Yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger. Then I kissed him before he could say anything else. The eggs burned. We ate toast. 7 months later, we married at the same coastal inn where he had shown me the ring. 32 guests. Naomi stood beside me. Daniel the dermatologist stood beside her. I was gracious enough not to mention that. Eleanor cried before the ceremony began and denied it afterward. Lila gave a speech with legally questionable details. Rosa danced until midnight. Theo accidentally started talking about retention metrics with a Crosswell executive during dessert. No reporters were invited. No billion-dollar valuation appeared in the vows. North Star was profitable by then. Everly still existed too. Smaller than Ethan once imagined, healthier. According to Rosa, he had eventually hired a permanent COO and stepped away from some daily functions. I heard he was dating someone outside the company. I hoped he treated her better. That surprised me. But forgiveness had done strange things to my imagination. It let other people continue living without needing their lives to prove mine was right. The night before the wedding, Ethan sent one message: congratulations. I stared at it for a moment, then replied, thank you, I wish you well. No hidden meaning. No final knife, no score to settle. I deleted the thread afterward, not because Julian asked, he never did, because I was finished keeping evidence from a case that had already closed. After the reception, Julian and I walked down to the beach. I carried my shoes, he carried his jacket. The air smelled like salt and cold water. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking. Dangerous. I was thinking about the gala. He nodded. The proposal. The other proposal. Ah. I looked toward the dark water. Do you know what's strange? What? I thought that night was the beginning of my revenge. It wasn't. No, he waited. It was the end of something. Ethan, fear, the woman I had been, maybe even the life I had already lost. I looked at Julian. I used to think being chosen was the most important thing. And now? I think choosing is. His hand found mine. We walked farther along the beach. In another life, Ethan's proposal had humiliated me in front of 400 people. For years I believed the humiliation was the worst thing that happened that night. It wasn't. The worst thing was that I had believed his choice defined my value. Being reborn did not make me smarter overnight. It did not make contracts disappear. It did not turn every enemy stupid. It did not guarantee that every decision I made would be right. It gave me something much less dramatic, another chance to notice when I was abandoning myself. So the second time Ethan Cole knelt before his first love, I let him. I did not fight for the ring. I did not beg for an explanation. I did not destroy his company. I went home. I read my contracts. I hired a lawyer. I took back my work. I built something new. And when a billionaire who had loved me before I understood how to love myself asked me to marry him, I did not say yes because he was richer. I did not say yes because Ethan had lost me. I did not say yes because I needed someone to rescue me. I waited until my life belonged to me again. Then I chose Julian, and this time I chose myself too.